let's get right to it. The State of the Union, Joe Biden was a pugilist on Thursday night. In your opinion, did he score a knockout?
Yeah, he did. He had to do four things. I wrote on, and he needed to get up in the grill of MAGA Republicans and the Mango Mussolini, and he did that too. So I think it was mission accomplished on all fronts. And instead of running from the age thing, which seems to be the only knock against him, really, he leaned into it. And they've now got this pivot. They've obviously worked out that, yeah, I've got, I'm kind of an older guy, but he's got really old thoughts. He's got really old ideas, and you should pay attention to that. So I thought it was pretty good. He was pugilistic. That is the word.
That is the word. So, Warren, help me with this, just the visuals, because I'm not the only person in the world who thinks that people tend to listen to television with their eyes. How did he physically look? Just be a TV producer here for me. Be the TV war room guy. How did Joe Biden physically look on Thursday night during the State of the Union?
He looked good. He's clearly wearing some makeup, as every president has since JFK. He was clearly using a teleprompter. To be objective as possible, there's some stiffness, right? When he, like some older people, he doesn't turn his head like that so much. He goes like that. His movements are a bit slower. But then again, you don't want your president of the United States jerking around like a bobblehead in the back, the back window of your truck. So he, but what you said off the top is so true. And I think you've heard me say it many times over the years. TV is about pictures, not words. TV is about emotion, right? It's not about rationality. And on those scores, he delivered. The visuals are good. He looked like a president, like he did. And, he remembered the Marshall McLuhan, mantra, the good Canadian who taught Americans how to use TV, which is TV is a cool medium. You can't be too hot on TV. I was looking at Trump last week when he was saying something insane again, and he was all sweaty and puffy, and his makeup was starting to drip, and his hair was, his comb over was flying up in the air. Biden looked like a president. And like when you're on TV, that's half the job.
When you see Biden constantly clearing his throat, and I lost count after 15, I'm not trying to be cruel here. I am trying to be as objective as possible. But when he's constantly clearing his throat, what does that say to Warren Kinsella, the TV guy?
Well, he may have a cold, but yeah, it's distracting. I do it with you. I'm doing it right now. There, I used an and I'll do you knows, and there are these verbal pivots that get used by people when they're collecting their thoughts or whatever. And so with a politician or a movie star or a newsreader, you don't want to have too many of those. However, and I've gotten prime ministers and leaders ready for leaders debates, having some of them is okay, because then you don't sound like a robot. You sound like a human being. You're kind of talking the way other people do. So I don't mind them, long as they're not so numerous that, guys like Charles Adler say, yeah, but what about that? Like Trudeau does it a lot. He will do a lot of ahs, AH, and, sometimes they work. They allow him to collect his thoughts, and sometimes they can be a little bit distracting. So my answer is, it depends. I didn't find it that distracting last night.
So one of the things that Donald Trump does right, and I think it is quite deliberate, Donald Trump, every 30 seconds or so, is giving you a soundbite. It doesn't matter whether it's brutal, whether it's mean, whether it's obscene. That's not the point. This is just, once again, I want to focus on television here, because television is Lord. Donald Trump, every 30 seconds, is saying something, whether it's outrageous or not. He's saying something that can be crafted into a soundbite. Does Joe Biden do that when he wants to? Can he? And did he do it on Thursday night? Was he creating sound bites for the TV producers.
Yeah, he was, and he delivered some on the age thing. They knew that that was a quotable, as we put it, and it got quoted on abortion. He had another quotable. So he had those moments established in the speech, which ran for slightly longer than an hour. I think the longest speech ever was Clinton. The shortest, the New York Times said this morning, was Nixon. So Joe was kind of right around the right length. But he had the quotable quotes in it. The messages I've described off the top, the Trump, abortion, democratic rights, American economy, and vigor, youthfulness. He delivered on all of those. He had a line on each one of those. Each one of them is either a strength or a weakness. And I think he addressed each one of them with, a quotable quote.
The business about Trump a few weeks ago, playing the role of the guy running the protection racket, telling European countries if they don't pay up, he'll basically sick Russia on them. He'll tell Russia he'll tell Putin he can do, and I'm using the Trump words here, whatever the hell he wants. Biden chewed on that right off the top. Did he do it effectively?
Yeah, he did. And it was, of the many, many, many insane things that Trump says, that is the one that creates the biggest problem for him with Republicans. Yes, on Super Tuesday this week, he swept all kinds of markets, but he swept markets with Republicans. As you and I know, having both lived in the United States, to win the presidency, to win the Oval Office, you don't just need your own people. You've got to get that middle third of Americans who describe themselves as independents. And the independents don't like what you just talked about. They don't like this, attacking allies of America, because sometimes America needs those allies, whether it's in the Middle East or the Falklands or, whatever. America needs its allies. It can't always go it alone. So Trump basically declared war on countries like Canada. That is what he did. And he's an enemy of NATO. He's an enemy of the West. I believe, that statement showed clearly that Donald Trump is an agent of the Soviet Republic. Like he is their guy, and they own him. So, that's something that I think the Democrats need to use, and I believe that they will use.
Biden said that America would not bow down to Putin, and then he did a very brief pause and said, "I won't bow down." Warren Kinsella, how much strength is there in that, or do you think that people only view it as hyperbole? When Joe Biden, at the ripe age of 82, and he would be 86 at the end of the first term, when he says, "I won't bow down," how does that strike you?
It strikes as authentic. I mean, that's the key thing about TV is communicating emotion and authenticity. And Biden's pretty good at the authenticity thing, and also strength. There have been two U.S. presidents in my lifetime who did not communicate strength. One was George Bush Sr. He had the wimp label attached to him, and Jimmy Carter, who actually lost the presidency because of the Iran hostage crisis, and also because he was seen as a wimp. So, every U.S. president needs to flex their muscle periodically. It's not like the job description in Canada. Prime Minister, you don't have to do that as much. We don't see ourselves as a military power. But the United States of America has got a military culture, as you know, and you've got to be seen as tough. And I think Biden, I've heard many criticisms of him, but never that he's a wimp.
So Trump, we're doing this on a Friday, and Trump on this day is meeting with Viktor Orban of Hungary. That's a painful thing for me to talk about, because Viktor Orban, and so much of what he's done, I realize most people pay no attention to what Hungary does. It's a country of about 10 million people, but it is my birthplace. And so much of what Viktor Orban, the so-called strongman, does has aspects to his behavior that remind me of the very, very worst of the country that I was born in, and that's something that I'm not happy seeing, especially when I know I still understand the language, and when I see him using the language that authoritarians like to use in demonizing their opponents and demonizing specific peoples. In the case of Orban, he doesn't go after the Jews as fascists did in the 1940s. He goes after the Muslims, but it's the same thing over and over again. He's also a total patsy for Putin. He's someone who wants to regularly lecture his neighbors, that is Hungary's neighbors, the Ukrainians. And that's very painful for yours truly to look at as well. Why is Trump hosting Orban? And what is it about Orban that Trump thinks may be attractive to American voters?
Donald Trump digs dictators. He loves tyrants. He loves despots because that's who he is in his soul as well. That's why he said nice things about the leader of North Korea, the leader of China, the leader of Russia. He's even said nice things about Hezbollah. He said that they're very smart. Donald Trump likes undemocratic or anti-democratic dictators. That's who turns his crank. And again, this is something that I anticipate Democrats are going to be going after. And I want to jump back actually to one of the earlier questions you asked about sound bites and so on. You know, watching the State of the Union last night, I was doing what a lot of people doing, which is, you know, how does Trump react to this? How does Trump deal with this? And he had some lunatic in her kitchen, you know, going after Biden. She sounded like just an idiot.
That was just so everyone's clear. That was a young senator from Alabama, and she is someone who has been touted as a potential running mate for Trump. And she was delivering. Katie is her first name. Everyone calls her. Everyone who loves her calls her America's mom, and her first name is Katie. So that too has that kind of a girl next door kind of thing. In any case, she may be a Sarah Palin, but without going too deep into that rabbit hole, the reason you're discussing her is she was the official Republican response because the Republican Party. Because the Republican Party is Donald Trump's plantation. It's fair to conclude that Donald Trump was giving her a screen test last night. It's fair to conclude that Donald Trump ordered the Republicans to make Katie the official responder to Joe Biden.
Right, but we've both now spent way more time talking about this woman than she deserved in her lifetime. So I don't want to talk about her. The point I wanted to make, getting back to your earlier point, is Trump has got a paradox in his campaign. On the one hand, the outrageous things that he says, Americans are kind of used to that stuff, right? They've heard him say outrageous things, such as, you know, on Orban or G or what have you. So they're not shocked in the way that they would be with another politician. He gets away with saying things that other politicians would not. But the paradox is, they're now also familiar with him. In 2016, they weren't, he was what was the show? Celebrity Apprentice? Is that what was it called? Right. Yeah, and that was his show. And that's kind of how they were aware of him, and hotels and casinos, and that's about it. Now, these outrageous things, people have a catalog. They've got a Rolodex of those things in his head, whether it's about Muslims or women or African Americans. They've got those things in their head. So while they're used to him saying it, they're tired of him saying it. Americans don't want more chaos. They've gone through COVID, they've gone through wars, they've gone through economic dislocation. They want, like all people want everywhere in democracy, they want stability. And Trump just doesn't give you that. Trump is the guy who comes in and blows up the bar, right? And starts a fight with everybody. So whatever their misgivings about Biden, I still believe Biden is going to win, because he's the guy that you're also familiar with, but he's the guy who gives you stability, not craziness.
So, and by the way, her name is Katie Britt, the one that you feel has already gotten too much attention. Senator Katie Britt of Alabama there. I've said it, I've dotted the I's, I've crossed the T's. About Biden and Trump and the horse race. Why is it that right now Trump isn't just ahead of Biden in the national horse race? And by the way, Trump has never won a national horse race. Hillary Clinton, the Democrats, beat Donald Trump in the popular vote, and then Joe Biden beat him even bloodier in the popular vote 4 years ago. And this year, Warren Kinsella, of course, hopes that Joe Biden will beat him in the vote that matters, that is the Electoral College. He defeated Trump relatively handily in the EC, Electoral College, 4 years ago. But this year, if you look at the real numbers and you drill down into all of the battlegrounds, at the moment, Joe Biden is losing badly. At the moment, it looks like an Electoral College landslide for Donald Trump. Why is Trump significantly ahead of Biden in the all-important Electoral College?
But the Electoral College is not going to be counted today, right?
No, I understand that, but I'm talking about if you count up the states, all of the states where Trump is ahead of Biden.
I know.
At the moment, it looks like an Electoral College landslide. I mean, the battlegrounds matter. Michigan matters. Wisconsin matters. Arizona matters. Nevada matters. All of these battlegrounds, even Pennsylvania, which ought to be Joe Biden country. He was born in Pennsylvania. All of them are in Trump's column right now.
All of the three words that you said that are most significant is at the moment, right? The vote is months away. Joe Biden's got more money. His campaign has got more money than God. Trump has got a big money problem. As of this morning, he's got to come up with $500 million personally to satisfy the decision that was rendered against him in New York State. He's got a campaign team that does not have enough money to compete in the all-important airwaves. That's number one. Number two, the Biden team has run against Trump before. They know his weaknesses. They know how to bait him. They know how to get him to say stupid things because they've run against him before and got more than 7 million votes than he did. Trump was ahead of Biden at relevant points months before the vote in 2020. The same thing happened. But the difference, as I said just a minute ago, is that, people don't like the way, unless you're a hardcore Republican, a MAGA type, Americans, independents don't like the way Donald Trump expresses himself. And they're familiar with it. They've heard it before, but they don't like it. They don't want that in their president. So why is Biden ahead behind right now? I would rather be behind right now than, in the last week of October. So I'm not panicked about it. There's a lot of time to go.
Why is he behind with black men? I could say blacks, but I'm going to say black men because black women are very, very much a part of the Biden coalition. Black men are as well, but not as enthusiastically as black women. Why are black men in the United States, at least according to the polls, moving into the Trump column?
Because they're like non-white, light white men. I hate racial groupings, but because they tend to be more conservative than their wives, right? Men tend to be more conservative, whether they're black, white, yellow, you name it. They tend to be more conservative than their spouse. And so that's why you saw, which is also Justin Trudeau's strength. Poilievre needs to figure out a way to break into suburban women. He's actually probably done a better job of it than Trump. But, they're the ones who decide who gets to be leader.
So I want to use the word illegal here for a reason. Democrats over the years and liberals in general sometimes annoy conservatives, and I'll throw myself in on this one, the small c conservative that I still am, despite the fact that I've got I've got a divorce, I guess, from the Conservative Party of Canada. I'm still, I'm still the same person. I'm still a small c, a conservative. So here it is. One of the things that annoys me about the liberals, and I don't like to use the word woke, I'm talking about liberal-minded people, is they're constantly telling me how to speak the English language. I mean, I can't be any more blunt than this. It annoys me. So even when it comes to something like people who are illegally crossing a border, Democrats refuse to use the word illegal, even though that's the word that most mainstream Americans use. They'll say undocumented. Last night, that is Thursday night during the State of the Union, Joe Biden shocked my shorts off. He said illegal. I cannot remember the last time any Democratic presidential nominee or Democratic president used the word illegal. I don't think it was something that he just kind of threw out there. I think it was premeditated. Why did he say illegal, and why was it an effective word? In my opinion, an effective word last night.
Yeah, I didn't like it either. I couldn't tell if it was a mistake, a response to that white trash, what's her name in the hat?
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Right. I don't know if it was a kind of extemporaneous response to her, and what she had done, or whether it was deliberate. I couldn't tell. Either way, however, it was a mistake. My parents brought me up. The Jesuits taught me no human being is illegal. No human being is illegal, ever. And so I didn't like it. To be a cynical Machiavellian advisor, do I think it'll work? Yeah, it's going to work. You know, Biden has been getting more and more tough on illegal border crossings and the border crisis they've got. And it is a border crisis. They do. They've got one. We've got a problem. They've got a crisis. So, but you know, calling human beings illegal to me is not the proper response of a democratic president of the United States. So my expectation is he's going to continue to get tougher on the border issue as we get closer to November. But you know, calling those people who are desperate to avoid tyranny or death or torture or just starvation, calling them illegal is not a Christian thing to do, quite frankly.
I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but I've lived down there enough, and you've been down there enough to know that is how they are referred to by many people, and they're
Yep.
referred to that. They referred that way, referred as illegal by many people who do vote Democratic, and many people who were raised in the same church that you were raised in. So I want to get beyond illegal to get to a word that is absolutely sickening to my ear, no doubt to yours. He won't use the word vermin. I don't think he'll ever use that word. Talk to me about the usage of vermin, where that started. That's something that Donald Trump likes to say. He likes to say the migrants are poisoning the blood of America and calls them vermin. And when he does those things, he really does remind me of the filthy 30s and 40s of fascism and some of what Orban talks about. He doesn't use the word vermin on Muslims and others, but he does talk about poisoning the blood of Hungarians. What's this business about blood poisoning and vermin? Who is Donald Trump talking to outside of just his own lack of conscience?
Well, it's the lexicon of fascism. And I had a column in Post Media about this just this week, how those who hate Israel, the anti-Semitic mobs, are tossing around the word genocide like it's confetti. Genocide being mass murder on the basis of hatred, the most serious criminal act there can be. And settler colonialism and apartheid. The first thing that dictators and fascists and extremists do is try to appropriate language, right? And it's critically important in any propaganda war, and propaganda always accompanies every military war. It's critically important that they take possession of language and they control the parameters of the narrative, they control the debate. And if you do that, that's half the battle. Trump was exceptionally good at it because he understands the language of dictatorship. In 2016, he kept saying about guys like you and me, fake news, fake news, fake news, to the point where that entered the popular consciousness. He did that because it was a quick and pithy way of discrediting every legitimate criticism guys like you make or I make of him. So its control of language is very important. The word vermin, basically any reference to a human being as an animal or an insect or some sort of parasite, was a technique that's probably been around for centuries, but the Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister for Adolf Hitler, pioneered it. And the very first thing they did, as you would know, is in the 20s, they started dehumanizing Jews and referring to Jews as vermin and insects and parasites. And that was critically important to the execution of the Holocaust because they wanted people to know they weren't actually executing humans. They weren't murdering human beings. They were murdering a parasite. And so we're seeing that again with Trump. We're seeing that on the far right, basically everywhere. But also, sadly, we're now seeing it on the far left, where they're using the type of extreme language that was favored by fascists for the same purpose, which is to dehumanize their enemy.
We've only got a few seconds, but I need to ask you this question, Warren. If it's ugly right now in March, how ugly, how brutal, and how bloody will the U.S. presidential campaign be in October?
It's going to be nasty. But as I say, I do believe that, I've written, full disclosure, I've written put together a few so-called negative ads myself. And I don't think personally there's anything wrong with being critical of the public record of your opponent. The quotes and votes and use of banknotes, as I say, that's their personal life is off limits. Unless you have an extraordinary situation like, the Access Hollywood tape being released to Trump joking about sexually assaulting women. That was legitimate. That deserves scrutiny. It was important. But, I think the Democrats probably are tempted to go full bore negative. I don't think they will. I think, if I was running the war room against Trump, and I'll be working for Biden again as a volunteer from up here, I would do what every good war room does. When I was running the war room against Kim Campbell or Stockwell Day, I'm a Western Canadian, so I'm familiar with both those candidates. And what I said to Chrétien is, I'm from the West. I know Stockwell Day is a loon. I know Kim Campbell is not disciplined. My job in the war room is to remind the country or tell the country for the first time about the crazy things they've said to turn them off as voting for that person. That's what I think you're going to see with the Democratic campaign. It's a target-rich environment with Trump. And for sure, I know what you're thinking. Well, it's not going to work for Republicans. Well, they're not after Republicans, right? They're after, the votes that they need to win the Electoral College. And, I think at the end of the day, young people, women, and independents are going to be in Joe Biden's corner. And they're going to be the reason why Donald Trump loses.
So it wasn't very long ago that we had the anniversary of Pierre Trudeau's walk in the snow. And you predicted on this podcast, and no doubt in your post-media column, that you thought Justin Trudeau may take advantage of that anniversary to walk in the snow. So what happened, Warren Kinsella?
Well, as soon as Warren Kinsella says something, Justin Trudeau does the opposite. Probably does serves him well. No, I do believe he's going to go. I talked to some people. I think who some of them may be, and they said, no, he's not going to do it on the same day as his dad. He wants to get out of his dad's shadow. He doesn't want to stay within his dad's shadow. You know who I'm talking about. So that made sense to me. But, next month, April, is the anniversary of him becoming Liberal leader. So if he's looking for an anniversary kind of thing, that's a good month to do it. It's the month that he became Liberal leader. 80% of the vote when he won in 2013. Some people have said to me, well, he wants to exceed the number of days that Harper was in office. He's not going to do it. He's going to run out of his constitutional mandate before he got to that. But at the end of the day, Charles, I'm not a fan of his style of being prime minister, but I know him. He's not stupid. Conservatives all the time make the mistake of underestimating him and considering him stupid. He's not stupid. You don't get to be prime minister by being stupid. He can read a poll just as well as my dog Joey can or I can, right? It's not good. He knows he needs to give the Liberal Party an opportunity to renew with a new leader. And you can tell he's a little bit fed up. And again, I had all these people saying to me, conservatives, oh, he's narcissistic. I'm like, well, tell me one fucking politician who is, number one. And then they say, okay, well, but this deal he just did with Jagmeet on pharmacare, that's proof that he's sticking around. I said, no, it's not. It's proof that he can leave, right? Because now he's given the Liberal Party stability for a year and a half to have a leadership campaign. So I do believe he's going to leave. I do believe I'm going to be proven right. And if I'm not, I'll buy you a fancy dinner next time you're out east or I'm out there.
Well, if you're not being the pesky person I am, I'll probably end up reminding you. Yes, it's true that the Conservatives make a huge mistake thinking Trudeau is stupid. He's not. Do liberals make a mistake thinking that Pierre Poilievre is just not a very good human being?
That's a very interesting question. Well, I was looking at some numbers last night, and the leadership, the preferred prime minister gap, like the party gap, the Conservative Party in some polls is as much as 20 points ahead, okay, on the party affiliation. On the prime ministerial ballot, the gap is cut in half to 10 points. So Pierre Poilievre is favored as prime minister, but Justin Trudeau is only 10 points behind. Something really interesting is happening. And what I think is, to answer your question, because you raise a very important question, I still think a lot of women, a lot of new Canadians, a lot of young people are parked with the Conservative Party right now, but they've got some concerns about Poilievre. They don't know if they like this guy. They don't know if they like this anger stuff all the time. Like, the last Mr. Angry that we had in Canadian politics was Thomas Mulcair, right? He was supposed to be prime minister too. And, the Conservative campaign actually that year focused all their efforts on Mulcair and forgot about Trudeau. Big mistake. So, being Mr. Angry, as Poilievre he's expert at that. I'm not sure that it's working for him in terms of the preferred prime minister question. So, I think the question you ask is a very important one. I don't think people should discount it.
It's probably poor form, but when all of the pundits agree that Thomas Mulcair was about to be a prime minister, I was the skunk at their picnic because I said, I know Canadians like the back of my hand. I know them in Atlantic Canada. I know them in Western Canada. I know them in Central Canada. Canadians want a prime minister, not an inquisitor. And people thought that was just
Bingo.
Interesting rhetoric. No, I meant every
Bingo.
word. And I think that's something that should give Conservatives pause. Canadians do not want the Grand Inquisitor in the Prime Minister's office in Ottawa. Warren, I want you exactly where you are next week at this time. Thank you for this.
You're welcome. That was my statement.